Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and I am a flower farmer in East Yorkshire in the UK, and we always are up to lots of interesting things on our flower farm, so I would love it if you subscribed and followed along with our adventures on the farm. In this week's video I want to show you something that has been a labour of love. I really wanted to do this project because I just think it's so cool, and also doing it DIY has saved me so much money. So today I'm going to be explaining to you how I made the neon sign for my workshop, which is now in my TP. So I made a custom blue and grey neon sign, which is the only thing that I always wanted in my workshop, just because I think it would add that cool edginess to the workshop. So I didn't actually film the original making of this neon sign because I was so stressed about it at the time. I was learning how to do it, and it was just getting on top of me, so I was like, filming it on top of that was just going to be too much. So over the Christmas period I decided to make a second neon sign which went up in our house, but I think I'm going to have to make another one for the workshop because this one's probably going to stay in here for now. I made another one of Christmas for the house, and I have filmed it for you guys, so I'm hoping to give you a little bit of a rough instructional video on how to make yourselves a neon sign. And I just want to put it out there, first things first, this isn't an easy task. It's very fiddly, and it can be very stressful, so make sure you maybe do some yoga classes, some breathing, some meditation before you start doing this, because it can be very frustrating, but it's very rewarding as well, because look at that behind me, it's very cool, and you save yourselves a lot of money by doing it DIY as well. So what I'll try and do is talk over the clips of the things that I filmed during the process, and also I'll put some links down in the description which will help you to purchase the items that you need for the neon sign if you fancy doing it yourself. And if my video isn't that instructional, then I will post the original video that I learned the technique from down in the description, so maybe that will help you to figure it out a little bit easier. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoy, and I'll catch you soon. So the things you're going to need to get together for this project are an acrylic sheet to start off with. For the first project I think I used something like 300 by 700 mil, and then with the second project I went a lot bigger with it, but it's totally up to you, whatever size your project is going to be. Just make sure you get the right size acrylic. And then I think I went with about 3 mil thickness, but I'll double check that and I'll put that in the description down below. And then a Stanley knife comes in handy for this project for cutting the LED rope light and various other things. You'll also need a soldering iron and solder. I went with a really cheap soldering iron for my first project, and it was absolutely horrible to use. So I would recommend that I would try to spend a little bit more on a soldering iron, because it will make your life so much easier. You will also need a length of neon rope light. I think it comes in 5-meter lengths, and for both projects of the neon lights that I did, I used 1 5-meter length per project. Then you will need some speaker wire, and you will also need a DC 12 volt 24 volt connector, 12 volt 5 amp power adapter, some silicone LED end caps, and some super glue. And also it comes in handy to have some wire strippers as well. This project differs a little bit from the previous project that I did because we chose to use rose gold perspex, which is mirrored, which is different to the other project because the other one was just clear perspex, which was a lot easier to work with. So I went on a website called Rasterbator. I'll put that down in the description, and I used it to create a large poster out of multiple sheets of paper, so when it's printed out I can stick the pieces of paper together, and it creates a large poster that's as big as the perspex that I ordered. So on my previous project, when I was using clear perspex, I could put this poster which read blue and grey behind the clear perspex, and I could see where I needed to work with the neon LED lights, but with this one I had to work all from the front, so I couldn't use the clear perspex and the poster at the back as a stencil. So we decided to finally use a Stanley knife to make a mark into the mirrored plastic. And this was pretty risky because we were obviously making a permanent mark into the plastic, and if we made a mistake then that was it. But what we did was we followed the template and just scratched a really fine line into the plastic with the Stanley knife, and it was barely visible, but it was enough to see where we were working with, so that we could stick the neon light onto the plastic. So to keep this whole thing looking really tidy, what we're going to do is we're going to be sticking the LED neon light onto the plastic at the front, and then we're going to be feeding all the wires through the back of the plastic so that we can see them. And in the Bloom and Grey neon light that I did, which was clear plastic, I used grey speaker wire, which was going to match the grey backdrop of my workshop. And I had to be a little bit more careful about how the wires looked at the back of that neon sign because of, obviously it was clear plastic. But with this mirrored plastic, we didn't mind so much about how the wires looked at the back, so we actually did it in a slightly different way, which I will explain later. But basically, you just want to plan out where your wires are going to come in and out of the plastic. So you want to find out where your neon light is going to be cut and where it's going to need to be joined onto the next point. So I went along at this point and pre-drilled all of the holes into the perspex all at once. So it might help to draw out a diagram of which pieces you're going to cut and which pieces you're going to just bend into a shape. And here I am measuring up for the downwards section of the E, and I'm going to figure out where it needs cutting on the neon rope light. Then I'm just using a Stanley blade to cut the neon rope light, and if you turn the light over so that it has the stripe running through the middle, you will see a section where you can cut the rope light so that you can get to the elements to solder the wires onto it. It also helps at this point to remove some of the white plastic from the back of the neon rope light to help you to access the elements a little bit easier. So this is the point where this project differs a little bit from the last one. So if you are using clear perspex, you want to take a length of wire that is going to wire from the piece of neon that you are sticking on at the time to the next piece of neon. But in our mirrored perspex project, we just threaded all of the wires through to the back of the panel and then wired them together at the back of the panel. So this isn't as tidy, but it doesn't matter because it's mirrored. But if you are using clear perspex, then you want to wire from one piece of neon light to the other. So I'm just selecting the length of wire that I'm going to need, and I'm just stripping the ends of the wires off. So here I'm just putting some solder onto each of the wires and also onto each of the elements on the neon light as well. Before we weren't doing this, but a friend told us that the best way to do it is to put solder on the elements and the wires first, and then you can just touch it with the soldering iron and it should melt the solder together to create a secure connection. So what I'm doing here, which I haven't managed to capture very well on the camera, is to put the silicone end cap onto the wire before I solder the wires onto the elements. And in this case, I'm using grey speaker wire and I'm using the black line wire as a positive, and I'm wiring that onto the bottom of the rope light. And then I'm using the clear grey wire at the top, which is the negative. So I'm just putting those wires onto the copper elements inside the neon rope light. I know the camera hasn't picked it up very well. And then I'm just touching the soldering iron onto that solder, and it's creating a stable connection. Once the wires are soldered onto the elements, then I'm going to add a little bit of super glue just for some extra protection, as the neon rope light is quite delicate. Then I'm going to place the silicone end cap on the end of the neon light, and then I'm going to just connect it up just to test that it is working and there is power to the rope light. So as you can see here, we are feeding the wires through the back of the panel, and then in the case of using a clear perspex sheet, you want your wire to go through the back and then round to the front onto your next neon light. So you need to make sure that everything is connected up to each other so that each element of the neon sign has power. So we're going to go along and super glue all of the neon light onto the panel and feed all of the wires through the back so that we can connect them up at the back later on. So as you can see here, Rob has very kindly offered to connect the wires up for me together at the back of the perspex sheet. So he has the power connected to the first connection so that he can check that everything is connected and working properly. So he's just going along and soldering the wires together and making sure that the positive is always connected to the positive and the negative is always connected to the negative, and then he's using some heat shrink to make sure that connection stays nice and stable. And this is the final product. Like I said, it isn't very pretty because we aren't able to see through the back of the sheet, but the bloom and grey sign is a lot tidier because we are able to see the connections behind the clear perspex. So we weren't too bothered about it with this sheet, and we're pleased with how it went in the end. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I hope that at least one or two of you are going to give this a go. So please message me if you do. I would love to see pictures of the final product, and if you need any help, then always I am there in my DMs on Instagram. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again next time.